Thank you for joining us for Surviving the Application and Interview session.
Welcome to the Survival Skills for the Job Hunt series. My name is Misty Ritter, and I am the County Engagement Specialist in Economic Development located in Jefferson County. This webinar series results in an outgrowth of past collaborations between MU Extension, the Missouri Job Center, and the Missouri AFL-CIO. And today it is an honor to welcome Amber Allen and Amy Bartles, who are Extension Specialists in Human Development. So over the course of the last few weeks, we've offered this series of webinars that help you and others think about changes in your life and how to embrace and prepare for a new career. Our experts are here to connect you with resources and workforce experts that can help you retool and find your next job. I also want to inform you that this presentation will be recorded, but it will be stopped for the question and answer section. So please post your questions in the chat feature or save your questions till the end of the presentation.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Like Misty said, I'm Amber Allen with MU Extension and Human Development Specialist. I'm housed in Greene County, so the southwest region in the state. And then we have Amy Bartles as well, who is housed in Camden County and kind of does some of central Missouri counties as well as the other part of southwest Missouri counties. And so today we're going to bring you a program that's about you, and it's about where you've been, what you've learned in life, and how to use that information in your world. But mostly it's about who you are and where you want to go from here. It's about recognizing strengths and realizing your potential. And today's lesson is taken from a larger curriculum called Tackling the Tough Skills. And it's based on the principle that learning does not have to be painful in order to be effective. We spend as much as 40 to 50 years in the workplace, and we should do our best to find the work that fulfills us. No job will give you the satisfaction all the time, no matter how much we like it most of the time. Job satisfaction on a day-to-day basis is partially up to us. And today we're going to go through how to build your base by surviving that application and interview process, and in long term, getting the job that you want. So remember, this is from a human development perspective. And so we're going to be doing more of a broad bird's eye view of the application and interview process. So what objectives are we going to have today? We're going to look at your attitude towards work will influence your success in the workplace, how good career choices depend on thoughtful planning, how good interviewing and resume writing skills can help land that job, and we'll determine our own success. So with that, we're going to start a discussion with some quotes that Amy is going to go through. And so this is interactive, so you'll be using that chat box and unmuting your mic today.
Absolutely. So work, like everything else we do, is an attitude. And that's kind of where our shift is going to start today, or our focus is going to start. So I've got this quote. It's, I don't live to work, I work to live. And wow, if I haven't found myself using that quote a lot really in the last 6 months, because my work life has kind of taken this hyper speed, but yet this sort of like things are a little tense, right? Except when I did a little bit of research into where did this quote even come from, it's from Noel Gallagher. And I don't know if any of you know who Noel Gallagher is. I didn't. But he is a member of the rock band that kind of started in the 90s called Oasis. And so you might think, well, what does this quote even have to do with me? I mean, certainly this guy's in a rock band, so, you know, his whole life sounds like fun. And sometimes we can think of our work, or maybe our lack of work right now, as really drudgery. But on the flip side, we can start to look at it as something that maybe adds value to our life. So I want you to ask yourself this question, and you can put this in the chat and then give you a little bit more information too. Does your work define you? And if the answer is yes, Do you really enjoy what you do? Because see, a vast majority of us, we don't enjoy our jobs. Now, some days I would maybe put myself in that category. Most days I do enjoy what I do. But in a national survey of 180,000 workers, over 80% indicated that they disliked what they did for a living. So if you have the capability to put something in the chat and you're kind of listening to us live, how do you feel about this quote? I don't live to work, I work to live. All right, so let's move on, and I've got a couple more quotes for you. So this one, if you're familiar with Thomas Edison, hopefully you are, he was born in 1847, and he's the most quoted entrepreneur. He said, "I never did a day's work in my life. It was all fun." Now, I'm going to tell you, here's a few more familiar quotes from him, or they might sound familiar. "Everything comes to him who hustles while he waits." And here's another Thomas Edison quote. "Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration." I've had a few bosses in my day that kind of would tell me that quote, especially kind of in my high school and college jobs, telling me to really get down to work, right? But all of these quotes go back to attitude. So the approach that we take when we look at events, that's our attitude. And so how does our attitude affect our work success? A well-balanced person is a person that feels good about themselves and about their relationship with others. They look at life optimistically most of the time. Their behavior reflects self-respect and respect for others. There's feeling of confidence, of willingness to take risks, and an ability to laugh at themselves. And all of this kind of wrapped up together really plays a role in shaping our attitude. So Amber's going to go through kind of those steps in how we get to figuring out what is our attitude about work.
So when we start looking at setting up our resume or prepping for that even job search or interview, it's really helpful for us to start looking introspectively at our attitude and what we're good at. So if you find yourself kind of in that latter category, unhappy in a job, feeling you're only living to work, or maybe you had a recent job loss, there are some steps you can take to begin to explore what you do like, especially in the area of work. We're going to spend some time going through some questions you should ask yourself while going through the interview and resume process, and even when you start typing in the search bar, what type of job am I looking for? So if you have a sheet of paper in front of you, you can jot down some answers to these questions and kind of reflect on these answers after this presentation, or, just kind of jot down a few notes. And this might help you reveal something you had not previously recognized about yourself, or even about what you like to do in the workplace. So that first question, I'm happiest when and I'm not going to lead you all to how to fill that in, but some examples are, I'm happiest when I'm outdoors, or I'm happiest when I'm working with individuals. Maybe you're the happiest when you're doing something on the computer, but what are you doing when you're the happiest? And then that second question, I know how to, is it you're really good with computers or Excel, or I know how to edit papers. What do you know how to do? And then everyone thinks I'm excellent at. So this may not be something that you think you're excellent at, but it's that one thing that everyone's like, oh, can you help me with A, B, or C? Or you always do really good at, connecting people. So what do you say that you're excellent at? And then I always smile when. What makes you smile? This doesn't have to necessarily be in the workplace, but what makes you smile and what brings you joy? And then that final question for the slide, I try to help people by, is it by talking to them? Is it by helping them reach their goals? How do you try to help people? And then this next, and I know I'm going through these fast, but you can always go back to that Facebook page where this will be at and look back at these questions as well. And so lots of people wish they could blank like me. So going back to, what do people tell you? I wish I could do that just like you. And I am a blank worker. Everyone probably will say I'm a hard worker, but what else are you as a worker? Are you the worker that keeps everyone together or makes everyone laugh during a stressful situation? How are you as a worker? And then I am a blank friend. What type of friend are you? And then I would never be late. I would never stop working till everything was checked off my to-do list. What would you never do? And then blank makes me laugh. We've talked a lot about what you can do for others, but what makes you laugh? Makes you laugh day to day, in the workplace. Maybe it's something, a certain type of joke that makes you laugh, but what makes you laugh? And then the final reflection questions is, I believe blank. What are your values? What do you believe? What do you believe in the workplace? Kind of what are your values and standards, especially when it comes to being positive and in the workplace? And then blank is up to me. What is up to you? What do you have control over? And then the third question, I refuse to let anyone blank. And this can kind of start laying that foundation of, what do you value? What will you refuse to let anyone do to you, either in your personal or professional life? Can kind of start guiding you when you're looking at what a role might look like in a workplace. And then I know I can blank. What do you know that you can do? And so these questions are really to start making you look introspectively and kind of looking at the glass half full. What can you look at yourself positively when you start looking at those resume and applications and looking, what can I do? How do I fit, versus saying I can't do this or I'm not qualified for this job. This is really to start turning point of, what can I do? How can I look for that opportunity and that positive next step in my workforce journey? So with that, we have another quote.
I do like the quotes. All right, so this one is from the familiar author. This is Mark Twain. I was seldom able to see an opportunity until it had ceased to be one. How many of you have ever gone, oh shoot, I wish I would have known then what I know now, right? The pace of our world and the pace of change in our world is kind of nonstop. We have 24-hour everything, whether it's the 7-Eleven, the Quick Trip, or it's the news cycle, or it's the, I wake up at 3 a.m. and I think I just need to order that new ... Hey, Amazon, right? Or hey, Alexa, and you can even have them order it for you. So what opportunities do you need to be ready to say yes to? Because, right, things change quickly. Here's the thing, there are companies and organizations out there that will spoon feed you, but they're really few and far between. Most are operating at warp speed simply to keep up. And so it's up to you to create those opportunities, or if you see one, to seize it and go after it. In fact, very few organizations, I should say, really make that job satisfaction a priority for employees. We can't all work at Google, right? But here's the thing, research shows that satisfied employees tend to be more productive, more creative, better motivated, more willing to satisfy the demands of clients and customers. So it is up to you. No job is going to give you that satisfaction all the time, no matter how much we like it most of the time. That job satisfaction on a day-to-day basis is partially up to us. So it's choosing the right place to be, and that's kind of where we're kind of walking into right now. But it's also seeking out those opportunities. And so I'll say that again, it's also choosing where you want to be. So here's my next question for you. Which job factors are most important for your work satisfaction, and which are least important? So some more for you to think about and kind of ponder here. All right, so we're going to move into what's the first step? I love this slide just because it to me, it shows opportunity. But sometimes that opportunity can feel a little bit daunting, right? As we embark on our career journey, the path will eventually lead us to a job, right? We don't know if it's going to be tomorrow or a year from now. It may be a first job, it might be a new position, it might be a new career path. An attitude that includes willingness to do the best job possible each and every time, combined with dependability, commitment, respect for others, and intelligent problem solving, those are prerequisites for progression to that next level. There's some steps to get there. And so with each new venture, you have to be willing to take that first step. It might be a little scary, might seem kind of daunting at first, but once you start that first step, the next one comes and the next one comes. So other than attitude, we're going to kind of get into talking about your resume, the application process, even the interview process a little bit. So I got another good photo here for us to think about. As you begin kind of taking that first step, this task might feel really overwhelming. So this photo shows, if you're just kind of listening in on us, this photo shows a stack of file folders, like just, piled a mile high. And if you can imagine the sound of that just being plopped onto your table or onto your workspace, you might really feel the weight of it. But here's the thing, there is a way to flip that. Always, in human development, we're looking for the way to kind of reframe that for the positive. This is your chance to really shine. This is your opportunity to tell your story. Here's what your resume will do for you. It describes your qualifications. It's what makes you unique. It's how you can stand out among other applicants. And to do that, you need a resume that really markets your strengths and your match for the job. So it includes some of these components. It grabs the attention of employers and recruiters. It sells your strongest skills and accomplishments. It shows maybe how you're a match or a good option for a position or a project. And most importantly, your resume gets you that job interview, right? So it gets you to that next step. Here's the thing on a resume. While it's important to be truthful, not everything needs to be said. So really, I want you to think about what you're kind of putting on that piece of paper or kind of in that electronic document. If you've never held a job before, or this particular type of job, or maybe you're not sure you have all the qualifications, a resume is a way for you to sell yourself. It's also a way to show how your talents, your strengths, these qualities that you're kind of putting on this document make you someone that the employer would be curious enough about to want to know more.
So as we move forward, I'm going to walk you through kind of that pre-application resume process. And so remember that human development perspective, we're looking for that positive self-reflection as we're going through this process. I also want you to think about that this can be in person or virtual while we're doing some of these steps, and some might be electronic and some might be pen to paper as I walk through these steps with you. So pre-application work. First question, why are you applying for this job? Going back into that quote, working to live or living to work. Are you applying because you enjoy the qualifications on this job and you're challenging yourself? Or are you applying for this job because there's a need for you to have a job for financial reasons, or you're needing to get that job quickly? So why are you applying for this job? And going back to those questions I asked you earlier. And then that second question, you need to ask yourself, what skills are you bringing to this job? Kind of that what's in it for me for that business or for that workforce? What are you bringing to this job? And what are your strengths? Going back to that, what can you do? What are your strengths that you can bring? And make sure those are on your resume. And then what are your weaknesses? They will ask that question. They will be looking for those because they need to know how they can look at those weaknesses in a positive spin. So already make that decision for them. You know, maybe you're very analytical and can get in the details. Well, spin that as a positive. I can get to the details, but I always look for someone who has the bird's eye view to also work alongside me. So looking at how to spin what might be perceived as a weakness into a positive. And then also look at what's your long range plan. Is this a job that you're willing to stay at the same title and salary for years to come? Or are you using this job as a long-term range plan to be a stepping stone into maybe management or a supervisor role? So what's your long range plan or goal when you're applying for this job? And so after you've made those decisions that are life-changing questions to answer, we're going to look at how to write a successful resume. Some of you, this might be your first resume you're writing. This might be updating a resume you already have, but maybe it's been years since you've updated that resume. Or maybe your resume was tailored to a specific job or industry and you're changing industries. So you're needing to look at how can I tailor this more to where I'm going. So make sure it's no more than 2 pages long. This is just a snapshot to make them curious, to bring you in and see you face-to-face or virtually face-to-face. So no more than 2 pages. Make sure it's clean and neat in appearance. Some different industries, you might be able to have a little more freedom on how creative you can get with maybe the heading of where your name is, but making sure it's clean and neat and your name and contact information is very visual in that clean and neat appearance, because if they can't get a hold of you, there's no way that they can lead you to that interview process. So making sure that is very visual in appearance. And then make sure there's no spelling and grammar errors. And this isn't a process you have to do alone. So making sure there's someone that can read through and look for grammatical or spelling errors, even if that is one of your strong suits. Once you've looked at something for hours, you know, it can get tiring and you might miss that one inconsistency. So have others look through it as well. And this is that time for you to shine and stress your accomplishments and abilities, but making sure they are recent accomplishments and abilities. Making sure if you're updating a resume from years ago, making sure that you're not having accomplishments that happened, you know, 10, 20 years ago, but there's no awards or accomplishments, maybe a gap. And if there is a gap, stating why that gap's there. So making sure you're stressing those recent accomplishments and abilities that will fit that job, and be honest. Don't, I've seen sitcoms that say this, that they just put random things on the resume because they think that's what people want to hear. Be honest about what your abilities are and where and what you can do, because they will ask things off your resume. And so what you put on there needs to be something you can back up in the interview process. And avoid abbreviations. All different industries have our own abbreviations, except our abbreviations can be the same as another industry, but mean very completely different things. So make sure, even if you know what the abbreviation is, to spell that out on your resume. And like I said, make sure your name and address is clear, because that will be how they contact you to move you to that next step and you moving up that staircase. And then best practices for that application. Very similar to the resume, but knowing every application is different. Some might still want you to print it out and write pen to paper. So making sure you're using blue or black ink, making sure you're using good handwriting and answering all those questions. And if typing, making sure that you're filling up those boxes and doing them correctly, even while typing, and doing it in a clear font. Also, while you're being neat and tidy, making sure you're going back through and making sure all those tiny boxes, because we've all been there where you've missed that one box or you didn't know you were supposed to check that box. So also asking for that clarity and making sure you're aware of what boxes to check and making sure that it looks clean. And then once again, be honest on the application. They'll ask similar questions to maybe what your resume was alluding to or things specific to the job. Be honest on how how you answer those and that they are true to maybe what your position is now or what your abilities are able to do. And once again, this is a common theme throughout. Be positive, even on, they might ask, what are your weaknesses on the application, and being able to put that positive spin. And also be positive if there's a question that asks, why are you looking for a job or looking for a new position? Putting that positive spin on why you are applying for this position, and not just putting because I'm looking for a job, but being positive of because I felt like my strengths would really fit this position. And here's A, B, and C, why. And then know your strengths and reflecting back on those questions. And your references, making sure your references aren't just your close friends and family. Make sure they're people that are in the industry or maybe work similar positions to what you're applying for, or maybe they work for the company you're applying for. Make sure these references know that you're putting them down as reference, and make sure that you have both a phone number and email contact information, because each business contacts references differently and in different times in those processes. So make sure they know so they're not getting a random email or phone call that they might not pick up or delete. And so making sure your references are aware that you're putting them down on this application as well. So with that, interview is that time to sell yourself. You've got that application in, your resume updated, they have called you. This is the time to talk about things that aren't on your resume or elaborate what's already on your resume. And this is an opportunity to see if this job and company is the best fit for you. You might be a great fit for that company, but you've sat in that interview and you're realizing this isn't what I thought that job position was, or this isn't really where I want my next step or my goals to be. And remember that interviews can be in person, virtual, phone interviews, and there's been so many more adaptations during this time. So make sure you're following those best practices to that interview environment. And I'll say this, even if you're on a phone interview or a virtual interview where they can't see you, still dress to impress. Because A, you don't know when you might accidentally turn on your camera in a virtual, and it just gives you that confidence that I'm dressed up for an interview, I'm doing something professional, and you honestly will talk differently dressed professionally even on a phone interview than you would than sitting maybe in shorts and a t-shirt because you're like, well, they won't see me, but it will bring that demeanor and change your environment on how you're presenting yourself. And also remember that interviews can be both one-on-one or a group interview with multiple people in the room. So those are just some reminders before we talk about the best practice for interviewing.
All right, so let's go over a little bit more kind of what Amber just alluded to. So these are best practices for interviews. And again, you know, we know that we're in this this time of physical distancing. And so your interview, it might be on a computer, it might be on Zoom, you might just have a phone interview. Take those kinds of things into consideration. Even if your interview is not in person and it's on a computer or on a telephone, be prepared and be on time. So 5 to 10 minutes early is considered on time. On time is considered late. I heard that from a teacher one time, and it was really great advice. And I think she probably got that from somewhere else, but that's really true. So make sure that you're there, you're ready. You really just kind of give yourself, by being prepared and on time, what you do is you give yourself the opportunity to take that deep breath, to slow down the nerves. It's very normal to be nervous or just to feel a little bit of that increased anxiety maybe around the interview. So giving yourself opportunity to be on time gives you that ability to kind of slow it down. The next one that's on the list says dress appropriately and look groomed and neat. So if your interview's on Zoom and you think, I'm just going to roll out of bed 10 minutes early and stretch and maybe I'll brush my teeth and I'll go, not so good. Think about your appearance. If it is virtual, go ahead and practice and see what that looks like beforehand on a screen. If you have a white background and you have a white shirt on, you might blend completely into your background, and that might not be a good look. Another thing I want to add in on that dress appropriately, I want you to think about the job that you're interviewing for, and then think about dressing maybe just one step above that. So for instance, it is a suit and tie appropriate for this job. Maybe you're going to be doing some construction work and you're interviewing for a job where you're going to be in that kind of work clothes, whether it's a uniform or not. A suit and tie might not ever be something that you would wear. Now, on the flip side, you wouldn't want to wear your painter's clothes, right? For a job where you're going to be painting, you want to dress just one step above that. Okay, so do some exploring there and see what would I be wearing typically in my job, and how can I dress just one step above that? The next one on the list says be friendly and give a firm handshake. Okay, be friendly. Give them that friendly smile. Remembering that you might, in our day and age right now, you might be, if you're in person, you might be required to wear a mask. Remember that ahead of time and bring that with you if you can. And don't offer a handshake if we're still socially and physically distancing because of COVID, but I want you to imply that handshake. You can really use that kind of in the next one when we're being aware of body language. So body language, arms crossed, frown on your face, slouched when you're virtual. That's not going to give a real good indication, but a sitting up, looking interested, whether that body language is on your face by facial expressions. I talk with my hands a lot. But being kind of aware of what your body language is saying. So if they're asking you some questions and you're giving a lot of facial reactions to that, and maybe you know that that's a habit of yours, you might want to practice in the mirror beforehand to say, wow, when someone asks me a hard question, do I immediately look like, oh, I'm offended, or can you kind of keep your game face on? And then the last one on there is active listening. So active listening includes things like eye contact, giving appropriate feedback, nodding your head. That's going to kind of coincide with body language, but that active listening says, okay, so what I hear you saying, right? And you might not use those exact words, but you're going to be engaged and giving some feedback to show that you're really listening to what that employer has to say when they're asking you those questions. All right, so best practices, again, for the interview. We've got a list here. Practice answers to possible interview questions and speak confidently. So again, you can ask a friend to practice with you. You can go online and search out what are some standard interview questions, maybe for this particular type of industry. I recently practiced with one of my daughters who was applying for nursing school. And so she wanted to practice interview questions. Well, it would not have been appropriate to practice sales type questions. She needed to be interview specific on the types of questions that she was practicing. So doing a little bit of homework there. Ask good questions and have some good questions ready to go. Make a list. Again, use the internet to search out what are some questions that I could ask of this employer for this particular company. And I will add in, do your homework. I've been on interview committees before where the person that showed up to interview had no idea really the type and scope of job that they were interviewing for. So find out, does this company or does this particular place that you're wanting to work, do they have a website? If so, check it out beforehand. Know the job description if you can, and know a little bit about the company's background. That's going to help in going a long way to instill some confidence in that employer. Make it really clear that you want the job. Don't be afraid to be enthusiastic. I always think it's encouraging when someone says, I've learned a lot about your company, and I would really like to have the opportunity to show you what I could do to help your company. Or I'm excited to have this interview and to share some things about me and to learn more about you. That kind of feedback, that kind of excitement and enthusiasm will make an impression on the person that's interviewing you. On the other side, don't be so quick to tout all of your good contributions that you forget to be appreciative. So sprinkling in some humbleness there. I'm very thankful to have this interview or this opportunity. This is a time to really let your manners shine. So use those manners, use thank yous, use words like, I appreciate this. And then finally, just relax. You know what you know, right? Take some deep breaths, smile, that can always help, that goes a long way, and kind of settle into presenting the best version of yourself. All right, so once that new job happens and you're kind of, halfway up those stairs, you've got some decisions to make. So the job's offered to you, and you've got to decide whether you're going to accept or reject it. If there's a message that's left on your phone or a voicemail or an email, make sure that you get back to them promptly. It's not a good strategy to say, I'm going to let them wonder about me for a week. No, go ahead and reply back promptly what your decision is or what your answer is. Make sure that you get all those details, things like work hours, salary, if that hasn't been discussed, how often you'll be paid, maybe dress code, things like that. If there are any things that need to be signed, go ahead and make sure that you get those returned as quickly as possible. And a lot of times those are the kinds of things that are necessary to get you started on the payroll. So Amber's going to go through some of those moving forward next best practices.
Now you are about to start this job. Sorry, we have others in our office, and so I was trying to not have echo sound. So some best practice moving forward. Now that you've got the job, how do we keep that job? How do we show them we're appreciative that we now have this job? The first and foremost is be dependable. Always arrive on time, and that goes back to that 5 to 10 minutes early. And that means having clear communication, especially if you can't come into work, especially in those first few months, or if you're not understanding something, being able to ask those questions so you can become more dependable in the workplace. Try to schedule appointments outside of work hours and arrange for time off ahead of time and letting them know with quite a bit of advancement. And then do good work. Put in the effort for your pay. Make sure you're putting in the effort, and this also shows that appreciation for having that job because you're showing that you're doing good work and putting in that effort. And limit those personal phone calls and non-work conversations, especially if you're in a type of job where personal calls are only supposed to happen at lunch or break. So eliminating those personal calls and non-work conversation. And take those breaks at those scheduled times that they're allotted and be responsible. And show that good work also leads to responsibility. And then look your best. This wasn't only for the interview to look neat and tidy just to get the job. You need to represent that company to those customers and clients, and so dress accordingly to that dress policy. And making sure you know what that policy is, especially if you're newer to that company or field. And when you're in doubt, maybe you can have a conference or something that maybe has a different dress code than your normal work hours, ask a supervisor or someone who has been there a while what that expectation is. And then learn all you can about that job. Ask for help from other employees or your supervisor as you need it or as questions come up. And then ask about training programs that can improve your skills. Maybe they have a professional development portion of that job and asking them how you can get additional training to continue to do that good work like we talked about earlier. And then be a leader. Help new employees and set good examples for others. Even if you are the new employee, you can still model behaviors that you know that the company looks for and encourages in their employees, because you can still be a leader and model those behaviors early as a new employee. And then keep a positive attitude. Like we said, that positively is kind of strung throughout this entire presentation. Always be willing to learn new tasks to improve your job skills, even if it seems like a tiny task or maybe one of those mundane tasks. That can still learn, and it still shows that you're putting in the effort, even for those things that may not be the fun, excited, creative things or what you enjoy doing day to day. And if you think something needs to be done, ask if you can do it, and then do it once you've gotten permission to do so. Even if that's even taking out the recycling within your organization. Maybe that's something that's rotated throughout. And then be polite to your coworkers, supervisors, and customers. If you have a problem, immediately discuss it in a calm manner. Whether that's employee, if that's to your supervisor, and if it's with a customer, asking your supervisor how they would like you to handle that situation. And if you have criticism or feedback, maybe it's your first evaluation with the company, listen to those suggestions and learn how you can learn from those, and really look introspectively at how you can improve yourself, but also how you improving yourself will improve the company. And ignore any remarks that may seem personal, but look at them on how you can improve, especially if it's in the evaluation process, and not looking at them as criticism. Once again, looking at those negatives and how to turn those into a positive. And so like I said, these are things that research has shown to increase your job satisfaction. So that positivity, approaching with each day with a determination, instead of saying, and I'm taking this from a coworker, instead of saying, it's only Tuesday, saying, it's Tuesday, and just not kind of getting down on yourself, but being positive and approaching each day with that determination to get to that next day of your job. And then consider your work a career or calling. If this job is not the one of your stepping stones along your career path, and you consider it just a job, perhaps you need to reconsider where you're working or what position you're working within that organization. And then enjoy your coworkers. Find ways to connect with your coworkers. Maybe they have a really cute cat or dog, or maybe they just are the one that has great jokes or kind of lifts the mood. But find a way to connect with your coworker on some sort of level, whether it's personal or professional. And then use assertive communication skills. Use skills to speak up about yourself, both your employee and coworkers, and kind of setting those boundaries. Maybe it's learning to say no to certain situations, but using that sort of communication to have that great relationship with your coworkers and supervisors. And then maintain a work-life balance. And this looks different for everyone. Remember that quote, you're living to work or working to live. Making sure you're doing a little bit of both, and making sure you're keeping that life balance, and it doesn't feel like kind of those big application folders coming back to you again and kind of weighing you down, but that you're able to keep that balance, just like the scale on your screen. And set challenges and goals for yourself. I'm sure a lot of us have heard of SMART goals before that are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely, because we all know if we're setting goals or challenging ourselves, that we're more likely to be engaged in what we're doing. So making sure we're challenging ourselves in the workplace. And learn from your mistakes and use those as growing experiences and not getting down on yourself. Acknowledge that a mistake was made, letting your supervisor or coworkers know I made a mistake, but then using that as a growing experience. And then be creative. It's easy to get in a rut, even with a new job. So look for opportunities to grow or expand your current job description. So that was a lot all at once. So Amy's going to give a quick review.
I am. Before I do that, I want to reply to a question that came in on the chat, and that is about how do you do this whole process if you are a person that has a limited ability or some type of a disability? And I want to make a couple of comments on that. So you're going to want to investigate the location's accessibility before you ever even start this process. If you're on Zoom, or on some type of, or if it's a phone interview and you need some type of accommodation, ask for that accommodation. Legally, they will need to accommodate you. Remember that you're not required to answer anything that makes you feel uncomfortable in the interview, particularly if it's about your disability. But answering or disclosing or offering some type of information to a potential employer can help that employer to better understand you and your circumstances, and then help you to work together to make some accommodations should you be offered the job. Do remember that the Americans with Disabilities Act prohibits employers from asking medical or disability questions that would discriminate against you in that job. And so if you want more information about that, you can search the Americans with Disabilities website for more information about that. Kind of going back in review, I want you to remember kind of where we were at the very beginning here, when we were at the bottom of the staircase, and when Amber had all those questions where we were thinking about what is it that I really want to do? Where do I see myself? Think about and focus on your strengths. Do your homework. Remember to sell yourself. You're the best one to tell your story. So where do you actually see yourself in the next 6 months, in the next year, or even in the next 5 years down the road? When you're thinking about filling out the pre-application work or writing your resume, have someone proof your resume. Use online helps. There's lots of different online helps out there. Again, having someone else look over your work, checking for spelling and grammatical errors, those kinds of things. And remember, practice, practice, practice. It's going to probably feel silly at first, especially if you're asking a friend or a family member to run through questions or to meet you on Zoom to kind of see how your arrangement looks. Maybe it's your background space, those kinds of things. Make sure that you give yourself plenty of time. So set up your space if you're doing this virtually. Kind of think about arriving on time. And then finally, when you're in that moving forward and in that hopefully job satisfaction phase, lean in. Really just get into that new position or that new role, giving yourself, a little bit of grace to know that you're not going to know everything that you need to know right off the bat, but giving it your best effort and really fully kind of just jumping in feet first. Give yourself the opportunity to meet new people, introduce yourself to new people, even if you're in a virtual environment. So maybe you're taking a remote work position and you're doing a work from home, setting up your space, and then taking that opportunity, even on those online meetings, to meet different people that you're working with is going to go a long way toward that job satisfaction. I think we are ready for, if there are any other questions that popped up in the chat, I'll take a look real quick, but we're ready kind of for that question stage. We thank you for joining